11, welcome to week 8. I just want to make a quick note as you begin the 3-week process of writing Essay 2. I just finished grading Essay 1 a week or so ago, and I wanted to make a couple comments about some of the things I was noticing to give you some encouragement, to give you some hints and some feedback, that things that are kind of cut across patterns that cut across all papers. And I want you to work or pay special attention to these points as you write Essay 2. But first, let me make a comment about a slight update to Essay 2. I've just added a new requirement to Essay 2. That is the ARC appointment. The ARC, or the Academic Resource Center, is a great place for you to take your writing. Many of you will have already gone to the ARC for other classes and other appointments, but I want to make sure every student has that opportunity and experience. So Essay 2 now has a ARC appointment requirement attached. You must take a draft of Essay 2 probably sometime during week 9 or 10 when you're in the later stages of the draft. And you will need to show a meeting receipt slip included, scanned, I suppose, and attached to your essay when you submit it on Foxtail. If you are a remote student, or if you're an on-campus student who wants to play it safe, there is a Zoom option for consultations to be done remotely. But make sure you make the appointment several days or a week in advance of when you want to go. And keep in mind, they don't have weekend appointments, so plan ahead and make sure you get a slot that works for you. Okay, 3 quick points, note takeaways from Essay 1. First of all, you guys are very good at art analysis. I was very entertained, very intrigued and engaged. It was very engaging to read your essays. Many of you wrote about Edward Munch's Dance for Life, and many of you also wrote about The Landscape Within Episode from The Conquest of America by Jean Monstert, and they were both very interesting. I want to make 3 points. The first one is, I'd like you in your second essay, your second go-around here, to focus on diversifying the kinds of observations you make. In week 3, I gave you the lesson on compositional analysis, and when you practiced in week 3, you saw a variety of forms of analysis. You can have rhetorical analysis, dramatic analysis, compositional analysis, and so on. Many of you in Essay 1 worked very, very heavily, almost exclusively in some cases, out of the dramatic analysis mode. That is to say, most of your papers focused on the characters in the paintings, what the characters are doing, the activities, and what's the drama, what's the situation that's going on, and what's the story being told, and so forth. That is a great way to analyze paintings, but it's not the only form of analysis. And in fact, lots of interesting details and interpretive things only come out when you use rhetorical analysis and compositional analysis. And I especially encourage you to think about those other 2 forms, rhetorical and compositional analysis, in your next essay. Talk more about the details of the way the painting is painted, technically, in terms of its style, the way things are arranged. Talk more about the rhetorical appeals. What is the author trying to get you to feel or think? Is it making a rational argument of some kind? How does the author create credibility? Think about rhetorical analysis and compositional analysis, and try to do more, certainly do more than just dramatic analysis in your next essay. Point 2 is that I would like you to work more toward, or I'd like you to work from, I should say, observations that are more in conflict or in contradiction with each other. That is to say, when you look at a painting and you're starting to analyze it and interpret it, it is very natural to start to form an idea of what you think the painting means. And once you decide on that, you start to perhaps prejudice your observations to all fit into your mold, your interpretive idea of what it means. But actually, you don't want to do it that way. You want to actually go in the opposite direction. You want to find things that don't go together, that seem to conflict, and then try to make your interpretation an explanation or a hypothesis speculating about how things that don't seem to fit in the painting can somehow fit? What is an interpretive possible explanation that makes sense of things that are contradictory? I think The Dance of Life by Munch is a good example. Many of those who wrote about this painting focused on how the painting describes the life process, how it's a metaphor for life. Perhaps these women are a chronology from young, middle to old age, or from pre, during, and post-relationship, and how by depicting life metaphorically as a dance, it's a kind of celebration of life, or a acknowledgement of the arc of life around a relationship. But not many of you described or discussed the possibly uglier side of this painting. The uglier faces or non-faces. This man doesn't even have a face. The central man eerily doesn't have any facial features. Some of the colors some of you mentioned on the human characters are a little ghoulish or are surprisingly deathly in their tone. And so there are some style elements of this painting that are more negative than positive. And that would create a contradiction of sorts. You would have to, a good interpretation or a deeper, more thorough interpretation of this painting would have to account somehow for both the celebratory happy elements, that life is a dance, but also the negative elements. Life is a dance, but what kind of a dance is it? It's dancing with these ugly, almost zombie-like men. Well, what could it possibly that mean? What does that amount to? What can explain that? And so coming up with a speculation that would explain both the positive and negative qualities of this painting would end up resulting in a much more interesting and I think better interpretation. So just to reiterate, point 2, run towards, not away from, the tensions or oppositions in the painting. The third and final point is that everyone pretty much across the board needs to go deeper, or I should say further, with their conclusions, with their interpretation or final meaning statement of the painting. For example, those of you who wrote about this painting, The Conquest of America, Landscape with an episode from The Conquest of America, wrote about how there's two sides to this army. There's a battle. One side seems to be the Native Americans, the other seems to be the European invaders. How the painting seems to show that there's a conflict, that the Native Americans seem to be more natural, more primitive, and in touch with the landscape. How they seem to be outmatched, or how the Europeans are much more technologically advanced than the Americans. And some of you even noted that you feel sympathetic for the Native American side, but not very many folks went to the next step, which is to say, well, if all those things are true about the painting, what does the painting mean? What is it saying to us? What does the artist want us to do differently or to think differently? For example, if you depict a war scene and one side is outmatched, is being invaded, their homeland is being invaded, and they look unprepared and innocent and panicky, and you're feeling pathos or emotions, pity for that side, well, what do you think the ultimate message of that painting is? What do you think the artist is trying to say? Seems pretty, it doesn't seem too much of a stretch to say that the artist is trying to argue for this side, to show that that there's a kind of injustice here, that there's something wrong about the invasion of America, that we need to think twice if we are in European countries about sending armies over to conquer and destroy Native American peoples and take over their lands. So the final message of this painting is really important and kind of like the final ultimate step when you're doing an analysis. You need to interpret it all the way to that final meaning statement. And something like that Monstert, the artist, is critiquing the conquest of America. He's saying that there's something morally wrong with it, that it's an injustice, that it's evil in some way, that would be, for an example, going all the way to the level of interpretation that I'm asking you to do when you do an analysis and interpretation of your painting. Okay, so those are my three takeaways from the first essay. I want you to think about and try to implement those things. Even though I've already made the lessons and I don't discuss those three things in particular, I wanted to just make this quick supplementary video to make sure that you were thinking about those things. Okay, excellent. Have a great week, and good luck writing your second essay as you start towards the end of this week that process. See you soon.